Okay, today we're going to use case wins for strings, and last time, in the previous video that I have, which is how to use case win statements, discussed how to use case wins for numbers when they're between certain values, as well as if they're equal to certain values. And this time what we're going to do is look at using strings. One of the things, just a quick note, I noticed as well yesterday is that there seems to be a little bit of a pause on these videos, so keep that in mind when you're looking at them, in terms of there's a delay of about 2 seconds from what I'm doing on the screen to what I'm saying. So just consider that. It's not always exact, but sometimes it looks like there is. So if you'll give me 1 second. We're going to use kind of what we had yesterday for our values here. So we have buy now, which we had this sense of urgency yesterday as our last value. I think was like buy now with an exclamation point. We're putting it all together and you'll see why. But we have buy now, we have buy, maybe, hold, and then sell. And so if you'll give me a second here, what we're going to look at is we're going to compare today how to make decisions based on these data. So 1 second, I'm going to think about how to go about doing this. What I'm going to do is just create a temp table. So this is one of the temp tables that we can create, and we will call it decision, and we will do decision date, which will be a date, and we will create a compare value, and this will be decimal, as you can see. That should be sufficient, and then we will have the actual decision, which will be a varchar. Okay, so we're going to create our table. And then insert into decision. So we have 5 different possible decisions. We can buy now, we can buy, maybe, hold, and then sell. And for those of you who remember yesterday, I believe there was only 4, but we had a logic to our decisions. For instance, one of the logic was, if the 200-day simple moving average is, double, I believe it was, the price of the stock, then it's buy now. If it's between a certain value like 25 or 70 or 25 and 100%, and then it's buy. This time what we're doing is we're saying, hey, if it's 50 to 100% above the price, we're going to buy. If it's greater than 100% like yesterday, we're going to buy now. If it's between 25 and 50, then maybe. So this is kind of one of those things. We're like, well, it's a good deal, maybe we'll buy it. And then of course, if it's if it's between 0 and 25, that's when we hold, and then of course, when compare is less than 0, then sell. So, and you can look at yesterday's video to see where this comes from. And notice too as well, really quickly, since we're using all these tools and we're learning how to use SQL Server, notice that we can just do the insert from the common table expression. So that's something to just keep in mind. The common table expression can organize our data, do all the aggregates, all the compares, and then we can just insert it into a table. Okay, so now what we can do is we can select star from our decision table just to see what we have. And you will see that's what we had pretty much yesterday. So we now have it in a table. So what we're going to do now is we're going to actually do a case win on the decision. So we're going to basically do our case win on a string. And like yesterday, the way I'm going to do case win is like this, and I'm going to end as actual investor sentiment, or actually I'll do is investor sentiment. Now the following part of this video is just for humor's sake. So, and the reason why I say that is because, so this is the decision that we're making when we compare the 200 simple moving day average, 200-day simple moving average, I'm sorry, to the price, the current price. Okay, well, what are investors actually thinking? And I mean, if this was the case, for instance, and I used the example yesterday of Warren Buffett, right? He bought Wells Fargo when it was at like $8 a share, and it's now at $40 a share. And if you look at the dividend yield of Wells Fargo right now, I think it's around 3%. Well, if you had bought Wells Fargo at $8 a share, you would be earning about a 12 or 13% dividend, because you're getting it at a premium. You have to think about when stocks fall in value. If it's a good stock, if it has very little debt, it has a lot of assets, those things, the value, unless they lower their dividend relative to their stock price, you're buying that stock price when the stock's on sale, and you're going to be getting a higher premium on your dividend. So the reason why I say that is because so when we look at this algorithm up here, if you would, the decisions that we're making, and that's all, by the way, when Warren Buffett says, be greedy when everybody's fearful, be fearful when everyone's greedy, all that is just an algorithm, right? What are the majority of people doing? Do the opposite. That's actually a very mathematical statement, because you can determine both of those. So this is what we logically should be doing, again, according to this group of investors, in terms of value, buying value. But most investors aren't doing that. That's why most investors don't make a lot of money, because what's happening is when the price falls and starts falling, people start to panic. So what are investors actually thinking? So the first thing what we have is when compare is greater than, and I'm going to use this for reference up here. So when compare, I'm going to start from the bottom, so right here. So when compare is greater than 0, what that means is the price is greater than the 200-day simple moving average. Then we should sell the stock, okay, right? But what most investors are thinking is Casewin decision equals sell, then, and what most investors are thinking is buy. Or what I'm going to actually do here is I'm going to do FOMO, which, for those of you who don't know, FOMO is fear of missing out. Okay. So fear of missing out means the price is going up. It's kind of like Tesla right now. Tesla's a hot stock, right? And what they found is that Tesla Motors right now, a lot of small investors are buying it. Why? Not big investors. Big investors know it's already a risk to carry. Small investors are buying it because of FOMO. It's fear of missing out. They're like, oh no, I'm not part of what everybody's doing. I have to jump in and do it. And it's the same logic behind like keeping up with the Joneses and stuff. It's really fascinating. Human behavior is pretty interesting. But humans will do that. They're afraid that they're missing out on something, and so they'll jump in and do what everybody else is doing. And okay, so then so when our decision here is sell, what investors are actually doing is they're actually afraid that they're missing out on good opportunities. Okay, when the decision equals maybe, then investors are thinking, maybe I should buy the stock. Or actually, no, I should say that I should really buy the stock. And that's what's usually going on in an investor's head. It's when the other is between, so when the 200 simple moving average is between 0 to 25% greater than the stock's value or the stock's price, that's when you basically are seeing the stock start to tick upward. The price of the stock, that is, start to tick upward, and that's when people are like, I should really buy. Funny thing about humans too is when they see a pattern for 3 days in a row, so if a stock price rises 3 days in a row, they tend to think that it will rise a 4th day in a row. There's like an automatic trained belief that, oh, it's going to rise a 4th day in a row. So it's something interesting, but like if we watch a stock go up in value, again, if you ever really pay attention to your emotions, that is, you'll start to believe that it'll rise the next time and the next time, even though there's actually no evidence necessarily that it will. It just seems like that's what's going to happen. So, and that's one of the reasons why when we start to see a stock price go up, we may start thinking, I should really buy the stock. That's why the very next decision then becomes FOMO, right? Now we're afraid because we missed the opportunity. Okay. Now when we have holds, so basically the person's thinking I should really buy the stock when normally what a smart investor would do is hold. Okay. All right. Now we have when decision equals, I'm sorry, actually this is hold, and this will be maybe. One second. Trying to think of what would be the logic of most investors at this point. Actually, what I'm going to do, I'm going to pretend like the person's holding on to it. I should really buy more of the stock. And then this one is going to be maybe... whoa. Boy, don't... Okay, that's why I don't think this is a good deal. Okay. So now the investor's thinking, man, I don't think this is a really good deal. Notice, by the way, he's buying here, or she's buying here. So at this point, the investor's thinking, I don't really know if this is a good deal, because the price has already started to decline, right? Compare the 200 simple moving average is up. So they're already having second doubts because they were buying at the wrong time. It's like everybody right now buying the S&P 500. Okay, and then when the decision equals buy, then sell. So, and this is a big one right here. It's pretty obvious, but in the sense it's not really unstraightforward. But like when you should buy, that is when most investors are selling. So that's just, and again, we can sit there and say this 100 times. But this is simply what's happening. How many people were buying the S&P 500 when it was down to, what was it last time, 600 or something, 666 I think it was? Very few people were panicking, and I mean most investors, especially with 401ks and such, people are now just starting to get into the market and think about how far the S&P, it's like at 1600, how far it's risen since then. And we're using Wells Fargo as an example here, but again, most people are not going to buy Wells Fargo at $8 a share. Okay, and then when we finally have when decision equals buy now, then sell everything. I will never buy a stock again. And that's kind of the mentality. And it's kind of funny to say that because I saw a lot of investors this past time. I was talking to people on the phone. Where I've worked for a while at a bank, and they just in 2009, so many of them were like, I'm never buying a stock again. I'm going to keep all my money in cash. Cash could pay me 0% interest, and I'll just keep it there forever. And so that's the sentiment of most investors. Okay, so notice what we've done here. So last time we looked at what happens when we do Casewins on numbers, we do Casewins on between values of numbers. Now we're doing it on strings. So we have this string right here essentially, these decisions, sell, buy now, hold maybe, and buy, there's very little buys. And now what we have is our investor sentiment. So you can see that Casewins can be applied as well to strings as well as numerical values. And you can see that our Casewin statement, which originally was where the value was between the numbers. So this is where our original Casewin statement, we built a string, and now from this string we built another string, which is what investors are actually thinking. And like I said, it's kind of humorous. It's not something meant to be serious, but this is actually what happens a lot in the investing world. But you can see that if you're trying to make a decision based on strings. I think yesterday I used zoo animal. What happens if it's a mammal versus a fish versus an amphibian? Then we're going to do this. And we could easily put a numerical value right back. We could sit there and say, cell, and we could put a numerical value like the probability that a person's actually going to do this cell, which would be very low, and things like that. So you can do a case win on strings. You can do a case win on numbers. You can do a case win on anything, pretty much. And it works very similar to ifs. It is not identical to an if statement, and don't get them confused with if statements, but it does work very similar to an if statement if you're trying to do it column by column.